Today we'll be talking about understanding the attacks of September 11th, 2001. Our main questions will be, what was the symbolic significance of 9/11 and the response to the attack? Why were the targets chosen? How is this like and unlike similar sorts of things from the ancient world? And what role did symbolism play in America's response? I'd like to begin by talking about how we as Americans view our country. We like to think of ourselves as better than everyone else. We're masters of travel and technology, sultans of shopping and commerce, producers of wholesome classic entertainment. We're the home of quality and unbiased news and information, and of course, no one could touch us for our cuisine. All of these businesses is what makes America, America. There's not been a president in the last century who hasn't claimed the United States is the greatest country on earth. This attitude, while positive for our personal morale as a country, does little for how other countries perceive of us. Now, one can argue that America's dominance was epitomized by the World Trade Center. This center of capitalism, money, and power acted as a temple of worship to these false deities. Again, while this was good for our country's morale, it was distressing for a lot of the world, especially for Muslims who felt that there was only one God to be worshipped. Something had to be done. The attacks of 9/11 weren't the first act of terrorism this country endured. Throughout the 1990s, there were numerous car and truck bombings, helicopter shootings, as well as planned attacks that the United States government was able to thwart. We kept these issues quiet as to not cause a panic, and we had the ability to ignore them. In a video from February 1998, Osama bin Laden was quoted to have said, "God wanted every Muslim to try his best to kill any American, anywhere in the world, due to American occupation of Islam's holy places, as well as aggression against Muslims." This truly epitomizes and emphasizes his desire for mass destruction. September 11th, 2001 was a day to go down in history as victim to these horrific attacks. Unfortunately, this was not something that the United States could thwart or brush under the carpet, and it was not something that our economy could protect us from. The bombing of the Twin Towers was a symbolic statement of contempt for America and the luxuries Americans allowed for themselves. America's response to these attacks was nothing less than irrational. Many senators and congresspeople claimed that this was a holy war and that we had to represent and fight to prove that our God was better than their God. This is a ridiculous argument, as we have learned that Islam and Christianity share a same God. President Bush repeatedly stated to be driven on a mission by God. Quoted here in 2003, he said, "I am driven with a mission from God. God would tell me, 'George, go and fight these terrorists in Afghanistan,' and I did. And then God would tell me, 'George, go and end the tyranny in Iraq,' and I did." This holy war, an unfortunate attitude, amounted to nothing less than a crusade. These attacks were clearly a negative response to the 9/11 attacks. However, on a more positive note, the non-profit organization Sesame Workshop, formerly the Children's Television Workshop, which became famous for producing Sesame Street in America, brought their show to Afghanistan. The original goal of Sesame Street was to advertise the alphabet in an enjoyable format for children. Since 1969, the country has brought the program to hundreds of other countries in order to cater to specific needs of the land. Sometimes they create their own show with its own characters, and sometimes they translate original Sesame Street and select co-productions when budgets are tight. In 2004, Sesame Workshop brought the show to Afghanistan in response to the attacks and the resulting war. Using recycled clips from both Sesame Street and Alam Sissim, the Egyptian co-production of Sesame Street, they created Kosher Sesame. Besides promoting basic learning skills like the alphabet and numbers, the show also promoted concepts like cooperation and peaceful coexistence. If you scroll to the bottom of this page, you'll find the first of one of 3 reference clips from The World According to Sesame Street. If you fast forward to about 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the clip, you will see an introduction to this documentary, which explains the fundamental philosophy of Sesame Workshop. The next clip is a translated version of Rubber Ducky. Now this is in Hebrew and not Aramaic, but it gets the point across. While this classic clip, originally performed by Jim Henson in 1969, promotes hygiene and playfulness, it also promotes unity. This is one of the most widespread and translated songs in history, And by playing this in so many different countries, it creates a certain brotherhood between one country and another. Joan Gans Cooney, the founder of Sesame Workshop, has often been stated to say, "My dream is that one day there will be a negotiating table at the United Nations, and someone will say to another some line of Bert and Ernie's, and they'll pick up the routine, and peace will break out in the world." Looking to the future, how the United States chooses to react to these attacks speaks highly of how we wish to be perceived in the future. Furthermore, how we choose to rebuild the Twin Towers will be symbolic of this reformation. Currently underway is the building of a memorial to the victims of 9/11 and their families. This is located at the footprints of the Twin Towers, and you could see in these pictures the plans for the memorial. You can also find more information on the building of this memorial at one of the links at the bottom of the page. This blueprint is truly a fitting tribute of remembrance despite the horrors of the situation and the continuing horrors of the war today.
My question was, why are the targets chosen? There were a main group of Al-Qaeda members that were planning for the attacks. They were KSM and Bin Laden and Atta. They all had their own ideas of what they thought should be attacked. KSM wanted to hit the World Trade Center, while Bin Laden favored the Pentagon. Bin Laden also preferred the White House over the Capitol, and everybody agreed on the Capitol. The preliminary target planning took place in 1999 with the 3 attack leaders. KSM created specific flight teams for each of the potential attacks. He sent them to the United States to take flying lessons. They used the practice time to search out good pathways for the attacks. They found easy access to important sites that were potential targets. After researching the areas around the potential targets, they found a fairway in New Jersey from Gaithersburg, Maryland, a route that would have allowed them to fly near Washington, D.C. They also found a hallway along the Hudson River that led straight to the World Trade Center. When they finally decided on their final target choices, Atta responded that he believed the White House posed to be too difficult of a target. He was told to keep the capital idea in mind, just in case the White House became too impossible. As late as September 9th, 2 days before the attacks, the conspirators were still uncertain about which Washington target they would strike. The World Trade Center symbolized capitalism and power in the United States, while at the Pentagon, there was a lot going on, and it was easier access than the targets. The attacks took years of planning between several groups and many people within each group. In mid-July, the report was that they would need about 6 more months, but they were hurried along by Atta. KSM knew he wanted the attack to be in the later months of that year. He planned it in the first week of September, based on the fact that the United States Congress would be in session at that time, which obviously in turn influenced the targets, which they ended up choosing. The conspirators planned times to take over the plane and everything. They based it on the takeoff while the guards were not quite set up yet. The location was not actually one of the most important parts of the mission. Impact is what mattered to them. They wanted to get lots of media coverage and have no less than devastating effects on the country they were so mad at. Bin Laden told KSM that it would do the job by just crashing the planes, not even hitting the specific targets. Atta said the attackers planned on crashing their planes straight into the ground if they had trouble hitting their targets. Atta himself planned on crashing his aircraft into the streets of New York if he missed the World Trade Center.